Right, when we hear from billionaire tech entrepreneurs and futurists, we often hear about their unending optimism for the future that they seek to build. But behind closed doors, our next guest got to be a fly on the wall for their more private plans of escaping the apocalypse of their own making. Joining us now to discuss is Douglas Rushkoff. He's the author of Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. Douglas, welcome to the show. We have an excerpt of this published on CoinDesk.com, and I just had a chance to read up on it this morning, and it was really something else. So, first of all, you get flown to the middle of nowhere for a private talk with a bunch of tech elite, and the conversation evolves from what to invest in, to how, what technologies to will eventually win out, to eventually how the apocalypse will happen, and how to best use your wealth and status to insulate yourself from it. And you write that for them, the future of technology is about only one thing: escape from the rest of us. And so this is the basis of your book.
Right. It was a strange experience, I admit. I mean, I'm often mistaken for a futurist. I'm really more of a presentist, kind of call it like I see it. And very often, investors are the last people to catch up with where we actually are. So these guys, I mean, they like me because I was the one who, when, AOL first bought Time Warner, I was the guy who said, I don't think this is going to work. It looks to me like Steve Case is cashing in his chips, and this might be, the end of the dot-com boom. So things like that, which seemed futury, but we're actually just kind of looking at where the cards lay, got me a good reputation with these people. And yeah, I thought I was going to do a talk about the digital future, as I often do for these kind of people. And instead, they came into the green room. They didn't even bring me out on the stage or mic me up or anything. And they just started peppering me with questions. The typical investor questions, Bitcoin or Ethereum, augmented reality or virtual reality. But then eventually they got around to Australia or New Zealand. And what I realized was that these guys were aware of the impact of the things they were doing. So, the executive at Epson Printers, who's responsible for bricking Epson printers after a certain number of pages so that we have to throw it on a toxic waste dump and get another one. He knows that's bad for the environment, right? He knows that time is running out, but he thinks the margin on that is enough that it can keep him ahead of the rest of us. Or even a big Bitcoin investor, you can say, okay, they realize that their Bitcoin investments are just really taking atoms of the real world and turning them into bits in this giant kind of funeral pyre of worship, to the token that proves that we believe in it, but that eventually time will run out. So can they make enough money in their crypto winnings to insulate themselves from the reality they're creating with proof of work coins?
That's really interesting, because publicly, when we see these folks, it's often, in these big conference rooms, speaking to big audiences at conferences and being very optimistic. And these people once showered the world, you write, that with madly optimistic business plans for how technology might benefit human society. So how does that square with, this apocalyptic sense of doom?
Well, a lot of the guys I talk to who are, at least multimillionaires from, say, social media, a lot of them who are working at Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram or Meta, as we now call it, they don't let their own kids touch this stuff, So they'll build stuff for our kids, but their kids are going to Rudolf Steiner schools or Waldorf and, living in basically, Faraday cages. So there's definitely a kind of a cynicism built in to a lot of what they're doing. And a lot of them do, a lot of great wealthy tech bros I know, they'll go down to Burning Man or even as far as, South America and do ayahuasca with a shaman, and then suddenly have the great insight and go, oh my gosh, the world's in trouble. And luckily, I am the sole, the sole force that can save it. I have a stack here. I have a stack with, we're going to put, agriculture on the blockchain. We're going to do, education through these pods. And all you have to do is clear cut a forest, plug in my nano, and build the beautiful SimCity vision of the future that I have.
But essentially, your meeting became an episode of Doomsday Preppers where they were basically plotting how they will escape from this apocalypse of their own making. So maybe you can go into a bit about that.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, you could even tell just probably from our little interaction. I can't help but toy with people like this. I find them funny. My book, far from being scary, which most people are wanting it to be scary, it's like after the first 20 pages, it's a comedy, right? This is a black comedy. These guys are crazy, right? They want to either, upload their mind to the cloud or get, robot guards. And so I started challenging them on the security. What about the rest of us? What about the climate refugees? What about the other 8 billion people, or the 5 billion that are left who don't suffocate on whatever you're afraid of, that electromagnetic pulse or pandemic or thing? What about when they come, Walking Dead style with, motorcycle gangs with machine guns? And they all say, oh, don't worry, we've got Navy SEALs. They always like Navy SEALs. It's never Army Rangers, right? It's Navy SEALs. I'd get Army Rangers. I like them. But I've got pre-contracted Navy SEALs that they're already paying them, that they're going to come out at a moment's notice. And then I asked them, I said, well, after the apocalypse and your money is worthless, how are you going to maintain control of your Navy SEALs? And they stop. And I see one guy write down on his pad, how to maintain control of Navy SEALs. And
oh my God.
I know, they don't think. They're like the worst. You meet these people, right? There's the sort of the one investor who's like, what coin should I invest in today? And it's like, you have to think a little bit more, just 2-3 steps out.
Well, you
right?
actually said that you should invest in relationships and people, and you got eye rolls.
I did. I know. I joked. I said, well, the best way to maintain control of your head of security is maybe pay for his daughter's bat mitzvah today, right? I mean, it was kind of a half joke, it was maybe an off-color joke even, but They didn't really understand that the real investment you have to make in the future is that. And once you're thinking, well, I'm going to pay for my Navy SEALs so that they stay on my side, then you might start thinking, well, what could I do to make it so that there's not a million people trying to get into my compound, right? Well, maybe if I'm a little bit less awful, if I don't try to externalize all the business practices of what I'm doing, then I won't make the world a place that I need to escape from.
Mm-hmm. But then you get into something you call the mindset, which allows for the easy externalization of harm to others, inspires a corresponding longing for transcendence and place and separation from the people and places that have been abused. The mindset is based in a staunchly atheistic and materialist scientism, a faith in technology to solve problems, an adherence to biases of digital code, an understanding of human relationships as market phenomena, a fear of nature and women. It goes on and on. Honestly, when I read this, it sounds like a lot of crypto bros. There's a lot of parallels there. And so I wonder what's the solution to this? Is it having more women in the boardrooms? Is it combating this, when you get this cynicism and echo chamber of paranoia? What do you do?
It's hard, right? Because it's long. It didn't start with digital or crypto, right? Digital or crypto maybe are sort of the best and easiest ways to move into an abstracted realm, kind of disconnected from conditions on the ground. But you can go as far back as, Francis Bacon, the Renaissance era founder of empirical science, who said, science will let us take nature by the forelock, hold her down, and submit her to our will, right? It's this domination fantasy. So you've got science and technology doing that on the one hand, and you've got capitalism doing it on the other, at least rapacious venture capitalism, which is kind of about this scorched earth idea of extracting as much value from a marketplace and then moving on. And when you're doing that, it becomes really hard not to get afraid of the people and places that you've dominated. So I would say the easiest way out, I mean, it sounds it sounds a little crazy, but is to get them to be a little bit less afraid of people and human relationships, to get them to think just a bit more holistically, to look at the impact of what they're doing, and to try to think about how to include people. And it's for us
include people. That sounds like socialism.
Exactly. Yeah, doesn't it? But it's also for us to realize, fool me once, shame on me, but fool me twice. Do I really want to migrate to Urbit or live in a seasteading community community, or do I want to look around in my own community? So, what am I doing? The fiction they're under is that they can earn enough money to insulate themselves from the reality they're creating by earning money in that way. And you actually can't do that. You're always going to have a little inefficiency. So what you have to do is start looking at what is the application. When you look at even something like Bitcoin, rather than thinking, how am I going to make money off this coin? You have to think, what can I do to create value with this coin, with this token? How do I create value for people? Then you're not running away from the effects of what you've done. And it's going to take time, but there are a lot of people who are realizing, oh, we can't go on like this forever. And we have the tools, we have the technology.